The Supreme Court of Appeal has ruled that bookmakers are not allowed to offer roulette or other casino-style games online. This has led to some confusion about the betting activities that may be conducted online. Wayne Lurie is the CEO of the South African Online Gambling Association. He joins us now to give us more clarity on what is taking place in the gambling industry. And Wayne, thank you so much for your time this evening here in SABC News. Let's start off here. Let's firstly get your reaction as South African Online Gambling Association, particularly when it comes to that ruling from the Supreme Court of Appeal.
Good evening, Mbali. Thanks for having me on the show. I just want to clarify up front, the organization that I represent is the Safe and Responsible Online Gambling Association. It's been newly formed to cooperate with regulators both in South Africa and throughout Africa and possibly abroad, to educate, to collaborate, and to create a safer gambling experience, an entertainment experience after all, which is what gambling's supposed to be. I'm also a practicing attorney in the area, and I've practiced exclusively for 24 years in the area. So,
then let's try and get your reaction as South African Online Gambling Association when it comes to the ruling that we've seen, and of course saying that roulette and casino-style online games will not be allowed online.
Okay, so let's just clarify what the judgment means. It did come from the Supreme Court of Appeals, but it was around a matter that had elevated there over the last 11 years from the Gauteng High Court. It related to one particular bookmaker that was offering live roulette games by a studio in their shops, and that was the matter at hand, whether live roulette could be offered, whether that was within the scope of bookmaking. And that was what it was found. That was what was found in the judgment, that it's not in the scope of bookmaking, that you cannot offer bets on roulette in Gauteng. There's no change to the situation anywhere else in the country. Most of the online betting is offered from Mpumalanga under the Mpumalanga Economic Regulator and the Western Cape under the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. And these regulators have concurrent competency under the Constitution, the highest law of the land, to offer licenses for online betting, which includes everything that's currently seen from licensed operators in this country. So it's business as usual in Bali.
Yeah. So then, Wayne, what does this ruling then mean? Like you're saying, that it affects Gauteng. What does it mean for the rest of the country, but also in particular for Gauteng?
What it means is that very likely the regulator in Gauteng, the Gauteng Gambling Board, will seek to impose this ruling on all of its bookmakers, because the definition in the Gauteng Act doesn't extend to what we call contingencies, only to sporting events. So very likely those bookmakers will be limited in an online sense to sporting events. As I said, in the rest of the country, because each province has autonomy in terms of its licensees and what they may offer, and indeed their laws include contingencies, which means any event in terms of which the outcome is unknown at the time of placing the bet, which is very wide and includes everything that we see in terms of casino-style games, sports bets, even bets on lucky numbers. These will continue. And already the Mpumalanga Economic Regulator has issued a statement to say just that. And I'm sure in very short order, the Western Cape Gambling Board will probably do the same thing.
Yeah, and I was about to come to that, because this only relates to Gauteng. Do you think that it will then be able to trickle down to other provinces, or has this been appealed for this to be sort of a uniform approach when it comes to gambling online in the rest of South Africa?
So the court has found specifically, the Supreme Court of Appeal's job is done. It has ruled that this relates to Gauteng, that it relates to the bookmaker concerned, and it relates to the game of roulette. There's no sort of trickle down from that. Unfortunately, the National Gambling Board have misread and misinterpreted the judgment, and they've stated their view that it has some form of trickle down. But quite bluntly, they don't have the authority to simply tell provincial regulators to turn their licensees off. So I don't foresee any form of trickle down. There's no legal basis for it. The only way there'd be a legal basis for it is if the Constitution were amended by a 2/3 majority of Parliament. And the chances of that happening, I would imagine, to be exceptionally low.
And Wayne, what will the impact be of this ruling, considering the confusion in which we are seeing at the moment?
Look, I think if we want to dwell on something positive in terms of it, we are long in need as a country in terms of some sort of harmony and clarity in terms of what bookmakers may provide from each province. I just want to emphasize that for 30 years, since 1996, when gambling was legalized in this country under the new constitution, there has been a cross-border gambling allowed. So in other words, just so we can clarify for your viewers, if you're sitting in Gauteng and you're playing with a bookmaker that's licensed in the Western Cape online, that cross-border play, so to speak, is 100% legitimate. So I think what positively could come from this is a clarity between the provinces in terms of the language that they use in their statutes, a cooperation between them, and the bookmakers making clear what the contingencies are that they're offering under their licenses as bookmakers.
And
I just want to add that when this,
No, you can continue.
Sorry, Mbali, carry on. Yeah, I just want to add that when this started, this was, so to speak, the casino industry versus the bookmaking industry.
Yeah.
And ironically, 11 years later, most of the casinos that would have been involved in the Casino Association of South Africa are now licensed bookmakers themselves.
I also wanted to then ask, Wayne, what would you say, because it seems as if there's a lot of grey areas in South Africa's gambling industry, especially when you look at provinces and other provinces varying when it comes to the rules. What would you say are the challenges associated with online gambling in South Africa?
So I wouldn't say it's a grey area between the provinces. Unfortunately, Gauteng is the only province that doesn't have contingency in its fixed odds betting scheme, which is actually catered for by the National Gambling Act. Our biggest, I would say that there is harmony, but there's very old legislation. It's 30 years old. It needs to be updated. But the bigger challenge that we face as a country, and the one that's been largely ignored here, in terms of placing blame at licensed bookmakers from provinces within our own country, are the external operators. The really illegal operators that don't pay tax in this country, we have no certainty as to the fairness of their games, and they offer their product into South Africa, some of them even using branding that might appear to be South African, and they're completely illegitimate. And I would say that if the National Gambling Board were to focus their efforts, they should start by looking at the illegal offshore operators that are exploiting our people.
All right, Wayne, thank you so much for your time and for the clarification. That is Wayne Lurie. He is the CEO of the South African Online Gambling Association there, reacting to that ruling from the Supreme Court of Appeal, particularly when it comes to online gambling and the sort of games that can be played online. But like he said, this relates to gambling in Gauteng.